Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged. Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. Today we have a very special guest with us. This is Dr. Sydnee Dickson. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Dr. Dickson. So glad to have you on today. Excited to talk with you.
Well, I'm honored to be on. I'm a formerly known as Twitter fan of yours, Brad. So this is pretty exciting for me.
Oh, thank you so much.
Let's get started this morning. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from your education to where you are now?
Sure. Without trying to give you a complete biography, I think I'll just do some touch points. I grew up in a rural community of about 100 people. My class was actually the largest class to come through Antimony Elementary in a long time. There were 7 kiddos in my class, and my grandmother was my teacher in primary school. So the world of education was just based on magic. Everything around us was used to educate, and she loved to read and taught us all to read. So I became a reader and a lover of learning at a very young age. And I had parents who were not educated beyond high school, but both very smart, and they both loved to read and were very civically engaged. So I feel like I grew up with this notion that education was very important. I had a school counselor who told me I didn't need to go to college. I didn't have anybody really helping me find the way and show me the way, but I just had the fortitude to know it's something that I wanted to do. So I found my way to college, being able to put myself through college, and ended up with a bachelor's in education. That's not where I was started on my journey, but I took a class that put us right into the school, and a beautiful little boy climbed up on my lap and asked me to read him a story. And I have to admit, I was kind of hooked from there on. My journey through education to get where I am now has just been led by loving teaching, but then feeling like I wanted to learn more about how to counsel families and students. And so I became a school counselor. That was a master's. While doing that, I was tapped to be administrator. There's another master's. I wanted to get my doctorate. I loved research and digging into best practices. And just that journey along the way led me from schoolwork to district work to state work, and now to this wonderful and blessed calling that I've been in for about 8 years now. I just finished my 8th year as the state superintendent.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And yeah, what we liked is that I think in your bio, you say was it a 2-room school or something like that? And, when you read that, it just conjures up memories of, like you said, kind of quaint and just, family oriented. And so that's just, it really paints a picture, just that phrase alone. And to go from there where you have is just, that's an incredible journey. So, you realized what you kind of wanted to do, and I guess felt a calling towards that, and you've just never looked back.
Yes, I think part of it's genetic, though, I have to say. My grandmother had 11 children, 65 grandchildren. And by the time she died at almost 103, I think we counted almost 400 progenitors who have, many of them are educators, and they all love to read and are learners. And so a little bit of it was just my grandmother modeling that learning for her own 11 children, and then all of her grandchildren and great and great great.
That's awesome. So, like, that goes back to kind of like we never know the legacy that we leave. And so
Right.
she probably never realized that, her granddaughter was going to grow up and be a state superintendent. So, that's amazing that, part of that process was her preparing you for it. So that's a wonderful story. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in hearing more about your your master's in school counseling and maybe how that has informed your leadership.
It's a great question, Jeremy. I think I used that degree and the training I received more than any other thing that I've ever done.
Mm,
I actually was investigating any kind of professional learning I could engage in as a teacher on how to help families. I was single, I didn't have children of my own. And there were just some situations that I dealt with that were really difficult. Some that are unimaginable in middle income neighborhood of um, child trafficking was happening in a home in our neighborhood. And I had
mm,
a 14-year-old being passed off as a 12-year-old in my sixth grade classroom. I had kids who were starting to use drugs, not in my classroom, but I just didn't know the symptoms and signs, and so there were just some really
wow.
heavy things that I was facing as a young teacher that I really felt I needed help with. So the counseling degree that I earned at the University of Utah was really blended with the School of Social Work, the College of Education, and learning how to engage in some cognitive counseling, but as well as just listening skills and trying to get to the root cause. Boy, that's fundamental in society today. Just listening to
Mhm.
one another and really trying to understand commonalities and where we can work on problems together. So that those skills that I learned truly have just helped me immensely. And then my experiences as a school counselor are some of the most profound experiences I've had as an educator, those that really impact me, where you advocate for the one or you care for the one, and how it's made a difference in their lives still to this day. So, yeah, I'm just am super grateful that I had that pathway as part of my career early on as well. So, thank you for asking, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's so interesting. And well, Jeremy, his degree is in organizational psychology. And so he always makes that connection, especially like with you. And, but it's so important, like you said, to build that connection with the students and know where they're coming from. And, today more than, it's more important than ever. And especially like post COVID almost, where, we lost a lot of that social interaction in schools. We see that deficit in the schools now with that lack of, connection and socialization, I guess you would say, with students. And the other thing, too, what you brought up is, it doesn't matter where you live, what age you are, there's just so much that students are dealing with and going through that it's so important to take that time to listen to them and to connect. So I, like you said, I knew right when you started talking that you were probably going to say that your psychology degree probably helped you more than anything on your path. And I think that's so true. Even in leadership, my thing is, we get the administrative degree, we get the leadership degree, but man, it's that EQ, it's that relational intelligence too that's just so important in, being an effective leader.
Yeah, and you make a really good point. I look at many of our preparation programs to this day with leadership, and they've changed certainly since I received my admin degree. But at the same time, we worry about mitigating risk. So we still support our principals and our budding leaders with law and special education services and all the things that have so many legal underpinnings, if you will, to them. We
Mhm.
want our school leaders to avoid risk and to be able to know the law and finance and all of those things that can get them in trouble. What we don't do a very good job of is the organizational theory part, the human relational part, the emotional
Mhm.
intelligence part. And I know that they get snippets of it, but those are the things that can make or break a successful leadership opportunity for those who
Absolutely.
engage.
You're so right. I mean, and I think sometimes that's not emphasized enough because yeah, those things are important, the legal understanding the finances, but day to day you're dealing with people just like the teacher in the classroom with the students, regardless of your leadership role. Man, it can be made or broken by those relationships and whether you build that trust and have their support and that vision working together. You can know everything else, but if you don't have that, you really don't have much of anything.
Right.
So you mentioned previously a little bit about your work with families. Can you speak for a moment on the importance of building relationships within the community?
I really have always believed that parents need to be authentic partners in the triangle of the student, the school, and the home,
Mhm.
and that we have we have the best interests of the child in common. So we need to start there. And I don't know that we've always done a really good job of engaging parents as authentic partners in the equation of school, home, and student, with the student at the center. We have that in common. Our teachers, our educators really care about the student. We know that nobody cares about them more than the families. And yet we've said, just
Mhm.
trust us, drop them off at the door and trust us. And we promise you we'll do our very best to serve them. Well, COVID came along. I try not to even use the word anymore because it seems so yesterday. We've moved
Mhm.
beyond that, but
Mm.
it really peeled back the layers or the curtains for families, and they became more involved and more interested and more curious and asking more questions. And in some cases, I think it made people feel like we were on defense a little bit. And so we've had to do a reset to think about the ways in which we really engage parents as authentic partners on behalf of their students. So I think it's a new era and a new dawn, and people are looking for options. The way that I think we need to lean into that is a personalized approach for every student. And it
Mhm.
sounds overwhelming, but when we think about every student being on their own education plan and their own success plan, then we work together with families in a very different way.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think I've ever looked at it from that lens before, but it is really important. So kind of on that subject, what types of initiatives have you been a part of that you think have led to the most community engagement within the schools?
Well, I'll step back to my past and then talk about where we're headed now and into the future.
Mhm.
I think one of the most successful things I did as a school principal, elementary principal of about 750 students, was to engage fathers in authentic ways. I had
Mm.
moms who would show up, but dads often had different schedules. I had mothers who worked, single parents, but a lot of dads who wanted to be involved, and they would say, "Oh, my wife takes care of that," or um, you
Mhm.
know, I'm happy with my school, but it's my wife who's really involved. So I started thinking about, as a leader, how does everyone feel like they're a part of the community, grandparents and parents. So it was back in the day where technology was just starting to have an uptick, and I involved dads. I had a dad's club, and so we talked about ways to engage in authentic projects with kids. I'll give you two examples. One, as we were trying to get more technology into our school, I knew of a couple of dads that were just golf fanatics, and they loved to go, and they had little teams that would be involved in tournaments. So I asked them to put on a tournament for our school to earn money for technology. And this is a long time ago, but I think we earned like $15,000 the first
Oh,
time
wow,
we did
yeah.
it, and that was just from engaging partners and community members. Another thing that I did as a principal was to engage a family who actually they own a mortuary, and the kids didn't know anything different, but there was a limousine that took the bereaving family. There were Kleenex in the back window, and the kindergarten kids would say, "Principal, why are there tissues in the window?" And I would say, "Because you are so excited. I know you're so excited to be dressed up and go in a limo to lunch that you might just get so excited you cry. So there's that little tissue, or if you get a sniffle." So we kind of, patched it over. But this cute dad would show up in a limo driver with the hat and the suit, and we worked with all of these partners in the community to take the kids to lunch. And just thinking about different things. Good principals do this kind of stuff all the time, but it was just, I would think about what are assets that this parent can bring to the school. If it was a mom or a dad who worked, um, we would find a time where they could come in and talk about their career. Or if there was a skill that they could work with kids, we would do some math tutoring or whatever it was, but trying to find authentic ways for families to connect with school and not just make it about PTA moms.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's so important to have that connection. I don't think we do enough of reaching out and extending to the community. I like to share that. You think about a child from about the age of 5, but I guess it's 4 now with preschool. But when you think about from about the age of 4 to 18, they spend most of their waking hours in a school. So it should be a place they want to come, a place they enjoy coming, and it should be a place that is connected to the community, not disjointed from it, because that's an integral part of their life. So I love that you did that, and we're thinking of ways to involve the community, the parents, like you said, instead of just the PTA for everything, but having everyone involved. I remember one school I was at, he was used to be Mr. Olympia. His name's Lee Haney. And so I invited him to come. I actually met him at the gym working out, and I said, will you come speak at my school? There were more dads there for that one that one meeting in the auditorium with him than had probably ever been on the school grounds, beside the first day of school or something. But just that connection, something that they were connected with, and they were like, they made the time to come. So just like with the golf thing, if you find things they're interested in and connect to, they're more than likely to be involved as well, which is
Mhm.
just so important.
Yeah, and another strategy that I'd like to figure out how we scale this up. But one of the things that I did as a principal that worked really well was to, again, I was um, young, single. I got married my first year as a principal. So that, the community was very curious about me. So they were very generous and lovely. But I was trying to figure it all out for myself. And um, I decided that maybe we could learn some things together. So I started asking families what they struggle with. Any encounter I had was a focus group. So if there were parents standing around in a group, I would say, what are some things you guys struggle with as parents? And is there a way that we can support you as a school? And we started talking to some parents about behaviors that their kids were having, or they just couldn't get their kids to mind. And I noticed in my school that we were starting to see the not my child syndrome. So something would happen, and I would work with kids on how to talk to their parents about it, or I would make a call home, and I would often hear, well, I asked my child and they said they didn't do it. So we were having a lot of that kind of thing happen.
Mhm.
And I found family therapist in the area that was very well thought of, and had him come in and do a series of seminars, and they were packed. I had an auditorium full of parents. And so there were strategies we started working on together, things that I could reinforce at home, that our teachers could reinforce, and teachers and families were working on together. And that taught me a good lesson, that we sometimes make some assumptions, and first we should ask what parents need and how we can support them in doing what's best for their child. So I still remember some of those strategies today, and still use some of those strategies and share those strategies. But I think that's another way when we look back at how do we have those authentic partnerships. Ask people what they need in order to do their best work. So it's asking a
Mm.
parent, what can I help you with in order to support your child in the best way to help them be prepared for school, or to help them do their best work at school? Ask the child, what can I help you in order to do your best work? And then first and foremost, the teacher in the classroom, what resources do you need? What can I help you do in order to do your best work? And it's the way I think about it from a leadership standpoint. I like to visualize my arm around people, because I'm a people person. I love people. I'm so interested in people. And then a hand on their back. So I care about you. Let's move forward together. Just, that gentle nudge. And that's all about progressing and learning and growing.
Mm.
And and I just think our families, our parents can be such a good partner in that relationship.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, what a great analogy too.
So, Dr. Johnson and I, our past couple of books, we have looked at the educational workplace through the lens of personality theory. So, what qualities do you see as making the biggest impact on great educational leadership?
Oh, I love that question. And I I'm trying to remember the title of the book of yours that I read that was about this very thing. And I was reflecting on it this morning. And, I think it varies. I think sometimes people think they need to be an entertainer, and
Hmm.
some will look at a great, just charismatic teacher and say, well, they're a great teacher because they're charismatic. Or somebody else gets kids to do really well on whatever the subject matter is, and yet they seem pretty low key and not as charismatic. And so
Hmm.
when you start looking at personalities, not every personality fits the right kid. But I think there are two ingredients, and I don't know if I would call it a personality trait as much as just characteristics of
Hmm.
setting high expectations and clear expectations. So we'll just underscore expectations that are higher and clear, and then making that human connection. And when you make the human connection and you set high expectations, you're empowering people to do their best work. So the key then is what personality characteristics in a teacher um, have the kind of acumen that it makes it easier for them to make those human connections. I mean, Brad talked about being an introvert earlier when we were chatting. You can be an
Hmm.
introvert and extrovert. You can just be a vert, and, and, and you can still care about people, right? You can find
Hmm.
that human part of you that gets you into education is because you care about our youth. You want to make a difference for
Hmm.
them. So you start there with the connection piece. I know some amazing teachers that are across the spectrum of um, shy to outgoing, and they show how they care in very different ways. But I think that has to be coupled with being really clear with kids and setting high expectations for the people that you serve, whether it's adults in the system or students. And I think we saw this again. I'm one who preaches don't keep going back to pandemic because we're so tired of talking about it. Um, but in our state, we actually did well in a couple of areas. One of them is mathematics. In eighth grade mathematics, we were the only state who did not slide backwards in mathematics scores on NAEP, which is
Oh,
kind of
good,
the
good, yeah.
the scorecard, the nation's scorecard for schools. And in part, we didn't take our foot off the gas. We were prepared with technology, unlike some other states, but we also
Hmm.
didn't lower our expectations for kids. And I where I saw that happen in some other states, I can see how that's playing out today. And if we look at attendance across the United States,
Hmm.
attendance is down everywhere.
Hmm.
And so again, what do we expect as a society about our kids to show up and do and be and provide service to one another and what they value? Like we've got to hunker down on a lot of those human characteristics and the durable skills that will play out in a civic society.
I like the point that you made. Different children will be drawn, I guess, towards certain types of teachers. And like you said, they all
Hmm.
don't have to be the same and they all aren't the same. You know, that's one of the things I like about teachers is their uniqueness and each one has their own strengths and abilities. But we do got to find a way to make that connection, like you said, where that they do, you know, if they're not at school, they can't learn. And you're right. And we hear that a lot from people about absenteeism and seems to be an issue more and more. And so wanting them to come to school, I'm like you know, you don't have to be an entertainer, but we do have to find ways to make them want to be there and enjoy being there and you know, so that they will learn and just and the thing I think with the connection, and I think a lot of teachers are pretty good at this is you know, one of the things we talk about is that being highly agreeable is that they are kind and caring and affirmational. And, you know, most do, regardless of their personality type, care about the kids. And, you know, and so then the next step, like you said, is setting those high expectations and helping them get there. Because if you build that connection with them, I often equate it to like parents with their children. If they know you care about them and want the best for them, they're going to try their best for you. You know, most of them most of the time will be that way. And so that's how we set the high expectations and help them get there is because they know we care about them and want the best for them, so they will work harder for that teacher and try to please them as much as they can, which is all
Hmm.
part of the relational, you know, relationship of education.
Right. I'm going to turn that question on the two of you. So, Jeremy, who was your favorite teacher, and what characteristic did he or she portray that made him or her your favorite teacher?
Hmm. So I had a teacher that she was my third grade teacher, and then she came along to fourth grade. She moved up with us. And I just remember her being very passionate and warm. And that was really big. She made every kid feel special. And that, building those relationships, especially over 2 years, it was phenomenal. And I'm just, very grateful to have had that experience.
It's great. Brad, your turn.
Nope, no. I actually share two. One of them that I always talk about is my seventh grade life science teacher. She made learning fun. She had fun review games. She was a Georgia Bulldog fan, so she would bring souvenir cups full of candy for the review game. And since I loved the Georgia Bulldogs and I loved candy, I would always study for those review games and win it. I actually became a life science teacher. That's actually how I started in education, was teaching science, and she was a big part of that. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back I realized the importance of it. And then there's one other person, but I always end my speaking with this, and it'll make you cry, so I'm not going to share it here. I might share it with you once we're off, but there was the other person that was a big influence on me. But you're absolutely right, we have so many that influence us, and even people outside. I try to remind teachers that you're impacting lives. Some will go into teaching because of you, but some of them will just do better in life because you were there and you impacted them and influenced their life. And they'll remember you forever. And that's one of the beauties of teaching, is that we do not just leave a legacy, but we live that legacy every day when we impact those lives.
Well, it's the very reason that I asked the question because when I ask it in a crowd of people just to kind of close their eyes and think of their favorite educator and, um, you know, how they made a difference, everybody can think of somebody. I don't think I've ever encountered anybody who couldn't think of a teacher who they couldn't reflect on as making a difference. So thank you for sharing your own experience. I always find that powerful. And Jeremy, you did ask me something, and I don't think I answered when you. I was talking about where we go forward, and I want to
Mhm.
hook it to something that Brad said about making school. It doesn't have to be entertaining, but it needs to be engaging. And I think
Mhm.
that's a word that gets thrown out there a lot, and we wonder what it means. And I think teachers feel the pressure to be entertainers or to bring, like your teacher must have loved, as you said, the Georgia Bulldogs, Brad, because she had a lot of stuff that she could bring into the classroom to engage all you Bulldog fans. But, not everyone has that opportunity or acumen. And so engagement is a really broad topic to talk about. For me, it comes down to personalization, and that's what we're working on in Utah and where we're going in the future. Certainly, trying to get away from the things that have driven our system for a long time. I call them the three B's: bells, buses, and butt time or seat time.
Seat
And
time, yeah.
those three things have really kind of we've structured school around time. So getting rid of time as the constant and thinking of it as more of a variable and making learning the constant is really the way I think we need to think about school to engage kiddos, making it very personalized for them, knowing what their interests and their needs are, helping them look at a variety of pathways. And I would love to see our students leave high school with a first industry credential or an associate degree. They're more likely to go on and be connected and do
Mhm.
something beyond just high school. Their earnings go up, their potential lifetime earnings go up. They're more likely to be civically engaged. So we have a lot of data to know that a personalized learning experience for kids is a more engaging way to learn. So those are the kinds of conversations I'm involved in, both locally and nationally, certainly with our policymakers that we're very excited about. And going back to your comment about just kids being disengaged, it links to attendance. Kids just aren't finding the need to come to school when they know they can do it online or do it on
Mhm.
their own time at home or whatever it is. So I think it's a new dawn of the way we think about engagement.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and like you said, it's hard, and we always talk about like rethinking education. It's probably been said since the second year of public education 100 years ago or whatever. But, it is a reality now when you think of things like AI now. It is easier to personalize, and it's not as much work, but it's probably more needed than ever before. You think about like 50 years ago, I always like to use the example that the teacher held the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. There was no internet there. You got your information at school, you got it from the teacher. And now, like you said, a student, is overwhelmed by information online, wherever they are, whether they're in a cafe, at home, on the internet. Like, they don't need to be sitting in the classroom to get that information, but learning what to do with that information, and like you said, how to find their strengths, their talents, and build on that, requires us to help guide them there. And so I really do think we're still kind of antiquated, and we're still trying to prepare people for 40 or 50 years ago, when we're not doing as effective a job of preparing them now. The other thing too, in education, I think we're doing better, and I know some states do much better, like you're talking about, with alternative tracks, because for 100 years it was, oh, everybody needs to go to college. Most people don't need a college degree to be successful anymore. If you're going into a profession, I understand that, but a mechanic can make more than you know a college professor or a teacher. And those types of careers, like you said, if they can leave school with an associate or a certification of some kind and go into that field, they can make a lot of money and be very successful. And so I think we do a disservice to students when we don't think about that aspect, because we know that for the most part, only about one out of every three students will graduate college anyway. So we're not doing a good job for that 2/3 of offering them those alternatives where that they can be more successful. So I love that you're doing that. You have that mindset, and that y'all are working towards that too.
Yeah, several years ago, we developed the Utah Porch of a Graduate, and it came about of bringing hundreds of educators and community members together and just talking about what we wanted for the kids in our system. What do we want them to know and be able to do when they leave the system? And we
Mhm.
developed MAP. Now we have a gazillion acronyms in education. So MAP stands for Mastery, Autonomy, and Purpose. So it's our Utah MAP. And our idea was to create a model framework or a model portrait of a graduate. And then we wanted schools and communities to wrangle with the hard work of creating their own profile or portrait of a graduate. Certainly, they could adopt or adapt the one that we created, but it's the work that goes into it to really having those deep conversations about what you want your students to attain before they leave your system or when they leave your system. So we know that content's really important. The M for us in that map is mastery. And that's mastery not only academic content, but financial literacy, digital literacy. The
Wow.
second part of that is autonomy. We want our students to be autonomous learners. We want them to engage in critical thinking and problem solving and have excellent communication skills and collaboration. People call those different things. And then the third thing that a lot of community members and teachers talked about was having purpose, learning how to serve, learning how to have empathy, learning how to be civically engaged, how to be good citizens. So that map then came about into teachers saying, so what would this look like in the classroom? And during the pandemic, when schools were shut down that next summer, the summer of 2020, we had hundreds of teachers get online and just work to come up with a rubric and a framework of what this would look like in the classroom. So we have a lot of tools behind it. We've been blessed to be able to have a lot of national recognition for this portrait, but when it takes root in all of the systems in our state, our education districts and charters, we'll know that it's making a difference. Because again, we want communities to come together and have those conversations. Those durable skills, there's a lot of work being done on those. America Succeeds. There are a lot of organizations out there that are looking at what employers need in the workplace. And yes, they want kids to come out with some basic academic skills, but the things that they're struggling with are communication and collaboration and teamwork. Our
Mhm.
kids have got their noses down in smartphones, and they're just scrolling through things. And and not stopping to engage with other human beings. So, how do we create a society where people are engaging with each other? Well, schools and homes can be working together to make those things happen. So, we're really excited about our Porch of a Graduate. It's been a great guiding document for our agency and for our schools. And those are the kinds of conversations we're having around the durable skills that can um, that can and should go across all or most of the jobs that either exist today or will exist in the future. If you are a problem solver, that works if you are a mechanic or if you are a university professor
Yeah,
or,
I
or
love that.
a mom or a dad or, whatever. So
Hmm.
those are the kinds of things that I think a lot of states are talking about and wondering, how do we measure that? How do we make it part of the fiber of our schools?
Excellent.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like an amazing program. It's
I
really
do
needed.
have to agree
Uh,
with you on the acronyms. In education, we're the
yeah.
worst. I always say that in third grade, I was diagnosed as BAD. And when I share that with non teachers, everybody gets it and laughs immediately. When I share it with educators, they're sitting there trying to figure out what the acronym BAD is. Behavioral affective what? Because we're just so used to the acronyms. Yeah.
I think healthcare has more, but we have our share.
Yeah.
I don't know. We try. Yeah.
So we talk a lot about the necessity of self-care.
Mm.
So what measures do you take to make sure that you're not feeling overwhelmed and that you can, kind of detach and de-stress a little bit?
That's a great question, and one I don't ask myself enough. This morning I heard an interview with former Olympic gold medalist Missy Franklin Johnson, I think is her name now, Missy Franklin. She was a swimmer that won gold in London um, and let's see, Sao Paulo, was it Brazil? Was the next
Yeah, I
Summer
think so.
Olympics?
I
Mhm.
think Brazil.
Yes, and they were talking about, they were asking her what qualities helped her to be a winner and or what number one quality, and I was so surprised at her answer. She said joy.
Oh,
Finding joy in what you
Mm.
do. That really, yeah, I loved it so much. And it kind of threw me for a minute. I had to think about it. And I thought, that is actually the thing that rejuvenates me. So I like to go out on a walk and clear my head. And people like to listen to podcasts. They like to listen to your podcast, I'm sure, while they're out walking. For me, sometimes I like to be totally detached and just look around me, listen to the birds, look at the sunset, notice the little things. Recently, I was walking quickly. I was in Washington, D.C., which sometimes can feel a bit chaotic. And it was when the NATO meeting was happening. So, there was a lot going on. And we were walking fast and talking and trying to walk around barriers. And there were police cars everywhere. And I looked up and there was the most beautiful sunset. And it was kind of right behind the Washington Monument. And I just said, everybody, please stop. I was just rude. I cut everybody off midstream and just said, look up at that sunset. Is that so beautiful? Does it make you so proud and so peaceful at the same time? And it's those, everybody thanked me for having them stop and look
oh,
at that.
yeah.
And I think for me, that's what I do, Jeremy, to answer your question. I just have to stop and find joy in the moment that I'm in. Or if I'm
Mhm.
not in a joyful moment, I have to plan and think about, what am I going to do to download or decompress when I'm out of this situation. And it's almost always very simple things.
Mhm.
Oh, I love that with the sunset. Sometimes I'll post either sunrise or sunset, and I'm like, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what you're doing, doesn't matter where you are in life. A sunset or a sunrise is just a magnificent beauty that there's nothing greater. I mean, it's just, all inspiring, I guess. So I really like that. I almost got goosebumps when you were saying that, and that everybody stopped with you to admire that because it's so true. I mean, just the
Mhm.
beauty of
Mhm.
nature sometimes just to take time to breathe it in and relax is just so recharging and refueling.
And to your point, Brad, the sunrise and sunset signify we have a new start, a fresh day, where we're
Mhm.
ending a day, whether it was great and we can reflect on one great thing. Our teacher of the year, Rebecca Peterson, the national teacher of the year, she had a blog. I think she still does this, but it's one good thing a day, and just reflecting at the end of the day on the one good thing that happened.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of that. Yeah, just every night, just reflect on that one goal that you achieved, and sometimes it's just surviving the day, in some cases. But yeah, just reflecting on that one thing and then, preparing the next day for something new. But yeah, in that new beginning. So that's wonderful. So I think we have just one more question for you. And so this one, Lattes and Leaders, is the name of it. So what is your hot beverage of choice? Is it coffee, latte, cappuccino, or none of the above? What gets you going?
Oh goodness, I'm not much of a hot beverage drinker. Once in a while, a good hot chocolate or peppermint tea or chamomile tea. But I've got a Diet Coke right here in front of me, and I like the red brand more than the blue brand. But sometimes you just need a shot of caffeine, cold or hot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, we've really had a great time talking to you this morning, and we hope to have you on again soon. I'm definitely gonna do some more research into the MAP program and a couple different things you mentioned. Sounds like you're doing a lot of really cool stuff. So we are excited for you and appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you, Jeremy. I am really blessed and honored to lead a state full of great educators. Our state agency is full of amazing people, but we have just great educators throughout our state that they do the heavy lifting. And my role is to be their cheerleader in chief or their chief cheerleader. And that's my
Mm.
favorite part of my job.
Oh, I love that too. And I think that's so important. Yeah. I mean, cheering them on, celebrating them, and, affirming them, encouraging them, praising them. I mean, if a leader doesn't understand the importance of that, then I'm not sure what they're doing in that role anyway. So we appreciate you doing that. And that's what leads to great things because you keep morale high, which is important, and, keeps them encouraged to keep going forward. So, yeah, it was wonderful to have you. Loved your story, love what you're doing. So, yeah, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you both. It was my honor.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guests, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.